Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Twilight settled over Gotham like a soft blanket, the city's jagged skyline melting into watercolor silhouettes against the fading sky. From his vantage point atop Wayne Tower, Batman watched the city transition into its nighttime rhythm. Street lamps flickered to life one by one, creating rivers of light that flowed through Gotham's grid. The evening air carried a hint of autumn's approach, crisp and clean, unusual for a city that often seemed to breathe smoke and shadow. "Peaceful evening?" Oracle's voice came through his cowl, a calm presence in his ear. "Crime stats are down 15% this week. Even the usual hotspots are quiet." Batman made a sound of acknowledgement, his eyes scanning the cityscape methodically. Quiet nights in Gotham were rare gifts, moments to be appreciated but never fully trusted. Experience had taught him that silence often preceded storms. "Too quiet," he replied finally. "Check police frequencies for anything unusual, minor incidents, pattern disruptions." "Already on it," Oracle confirmed. "Nothing significant on regular channels, but there's something odd about bank security protocols tonight. First Gotham Trust and Mercantile Bank both implemented emergency security overrides within 10 minutes of each other." Batman's posture shifted subtly, relaxation giving way to alertness. "Those banks are on opposite sides of the city. Connected ownership? Separate entities," Oracle answered. "Different security systems, different protocols, but both showing the same anomaly. External override codes being accepted without physical confirmation." Batman was already moving, firing his grapnel toward an adjacent building. "Remote access to both security systems simultaneously suggests coordination. Send me building schematics for both locations." "Incoming," Oracle replied as Batman swung through the evening air, the city blurring beneath him. "Something else." Facial recognition just flagged someone entering First Gotham Trust 20 minutes ago. Brief glimpse only, but the system suggests an 82% match for Harvey Dent. Batman landed on a gargoyle overlooking the financial district, his cape settling around him like folded wings. "Two-Face," he stated, the name carrying weight beyond its syllables. "Check recent activity. Has he escaped from Arkham?" "That's what's strange," Oracle replied. "No alerts from Arkham. According to their system, Harvey Dent is still in custody. Last bed check was 3 hours ago." "Someone's covering his absence," Batman concluded. "Or he's found a way to manipulate the reporting system." He paused, analyzing the implications. 2 banks, 2 security breaches. Duality, Oracle finished his thought. His signature, but what's the play here? Bank robberies aren't typically his style, too conventional for Two-Face's sense of poetic justice. Batman was already moving again, cutting through Gotham's skyline with practiced efficiency. "It's not about money. 2 simultaneous locations means he's setting up a choice, a coin flip on a city-wide scale." As if confirming his suspicion, the comm channel crackled with static before a new voice cut through. instantly recognizable despite its distortion. "Good evening, Batman." Two-Face's raspy voice carried both smooth and damaged tones, the duality of his condition evident even through electronic transmission. "Wondering which bank to visit first? Heads or tails? Left or right? East or west? Choices." Batman's expression remained impassive behind his cowl. "Harvey, what have you done?" A harsh laugh echoed through the channel. "Created balance. First Gotham Trust holds 23 people, bankers working late, security personnel, cleaning staff. Mercantile Bank holds 22. Nearly perfect symmetry, wouldn't you say? Hostages," Batman stated flatly, increasing his pace across the rooftops. "Participants," Two-Face corrected, "in an experiment about justice and chance. Both banks are wired with exactly the same amount of explosives. Both have precisely 60 minutes before detonation. Both need the same defusal sequence." A metallic sound came through the transmission, the unmistakable ring of a coin being flipped. "But I'll only be at one location to provide the final disarm code." Batman's mind was already calculating distances, variables, potential approaches. "Why are you doing this, Harvey? These people have done nothing to you. Nothing." Two-Face's voice hardened. "These banks laundered money for Falcone and Maroni for years. They foreclosed on families during Gotham's worst crises. They denied loans to rebuild the East End while financing luxury developments downtown. Their hands aren't clean, they just wear nicer gloves than most criminals." Oracle's voice cut in on a private channel. "I've got GCPD mobilizing to both locations. Commissioner Gordon is coordinating, but they're hanging back until they understand the situation better." "Wise," Batman replied softly. "Harvey will have contingencies for police involvement." "Talking to your friends?" Two-Face asked. "Go ahead, call in the cavalry, but remember overrides are in place. Any attempt to evacuate either building triggers both detonations immediately. Any attempt to disarm one location without the proper sequence triggers both. Perfect balance." Batman reached the edge of the financial district, pausing momentarily to study the glowing grid of building schematics Oracle had sent to his cowl display. "You've never been about random destruction, Harvey. This isn't you, this is the coin controlling you." "The coin brings clarity," Two-Face replied, his voice momentarily softening to something closer to Harvey Dent's former cadence. "When every choice is reduced to two possibilities, decision becomes pure. No politics, no corruption, no bias, just chance." The harsher voice returned. "You have 55 minutes remaining. First Gotham Trust or Mercantile Bank, your choice should be random too. Flip a coin, Batman. Let chance decide who lives or dies tonight." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Batman with the ambient sounds of the city and Oracle's measured breathing in his ear. "He's not giving us much time," she observed. "First, Gotham Trust is closer to your position, but Mercantile has fewer security measures to bypass." Batman was already moving again, cutting through the night air with focused precision. Two-Face would have calculated those variables: distance, accessibility, response time. He's forcing a choice without a clearly correct answer. "So which one?" Oracle asked. "We can't be in two places at once." Batman's reply came with quiet certainty. "We don't have to be." The exterior of First Gotham Trust embodied old Gotham wealth, granite columns and Art Deco flourishes surrounding windows that still looked out on the city with Depression Zero gravitas. Batman avoided the front entrance entirely, instead accessing the rooftop through a maintenance door whose security system yielded to his electronic countermeasures. The building was eerily silent, the usual nighttime skeleton crew of security guards conspicuously absent. Oracle, I need you to access Mercantile Bank's security system, Batman sub-vocalized as he moved silently through the upper floor. Full spectrum analysis, heat signatures, motion detection, structural anomalies. Working on it, she replied, but Two-Face's override is sophisticated. He's rerouted all security protocols through an external server. I'm trying to trace it now. Batman paused at the central stairwell, engaging his cowl's thermal imaging. Multiple heat signatures appeared on the floors below, human forms clustered in what appeared to be the main vault area on the ground floor. Most were seated or kneeling, their positions suggesting restraint or compliance. Two figures stood apart, one moving with the distinctive pacing pattern of a guard. I count 21 potential hostages at First Gotham, Batman reported, plus 2 hostiles. Harvey mentioned 23 total occupants, which means he's there, Oracle concluded. Two-Face is personally overseeing this location. Batman considered this information carefully. Why tell me there are 23 people here if I can easily determine that includes him? He's drawing attention to his presence deliberately. A trap? Or another layer to his game? Batman continued his descent, moving noiselessly despite the aged building's tendency to creak and settle. What about Mercantile? Security feeds are completely dark, but I'm getting power fluctuations consistent with improvised explosive devices. Building schematics show the vault is on a sub-level, more modern design than First Gotham Trust. A notification blinked in Batman's cowl display, a message from Alfred appearing in text form. Master Bruce, I've prepared the secondary transport with the equipment you requested. ETA to Mercantile Bank, 12 minutes. Good. Batman replied softly. Two-Face expects me to choose one location and abandon the other. We're giving him a third option. The main banking floor of First Gotham Trust was a cathedral to financial stability. Marble floors, brass fixtures, and a ceiling adorned with faded murals depicting Gotham's industrial past. Batman observed the scene from the shadows of the mezzanine level. 21 hostages gathered near the central vault, zip-tied in pairs and surrounded by what appeared to be carefully positioned explosive devices. Two-Face himself stood before the vault door, his scarred profile illuminated by the emergency lighting. The second guard, a tall man with a tactical vest over civilian clothes, circled the hostages with methodical precision. His movements suggested military or law enforcement training, his attention focused entirely on the captives rather than his surroundings. An amateur mistake that Batman filed away as potentially useful. I have visual confirmation of Two-Face at First Gotham Trust, Batman whispered to Oracle. The explosives appear to be remotely triggered, pressure-sensitive plates beneath each pair of hostages. Clever, Oracle acknowledged. Prevents individual escape attempts. Alfred is 3 minutes from Mercantile with your equipment. How do you want to play this? Batman watched as Two-Face checked his watch, then addressed his hostages with the theatrical flair of the courtroom prosecutor he had once been. The man's split personality was evident even in his clothing. Immaculate suit and polished shoe on his left side, burned leather and scuffed boot on his right. The duality that defined his madness extended to every aspect of his appearance and behavior. You're probably wondering why you're still alive, Two-Face was saying, his undamaged voice carrying the smooth cadence that had once swayed Gotham juries. It's simple. Chance has favored you so far. The scarred half of his mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. Every 15 minutes, I flip this coin. He held up the distinctive double-headed silver dollar, scarred on one side just as he was. Heads, you continue breathing. Tails, he gestured to the explosives surrounding them. Well, Banking is all about calculated risk, isn't it? A woman among the hostages spoke up, her voice surprisingly steady despite her obvious fear. Harvey, this isn't justice. These people aren't responsible for what happened to you. Two-Face tilted his head, studying her with mismatched eyes. Rachel, he murmured, momentary confusion crossing his features before his expression hardened again. No, not Rachel. She's dead. You're Janet Myers, loan officer, denied small business applications from the East End while approving corporate expansions downtown. His voice roughened. Everyone here represents the two-faced nature of Gotham's justice system, clean on the surface, corrupt underneath. Batman recognized his opening. Two-Face was intellectualizing his actions, a pattern that had emerged more frequently in recent encounters. The man's fractured psyche still contained elements of Harvey Dent's moral framework, however twisted by trauma and obsession. Oracle, Batman whispered. I need a distraction at Mercantile Bank. Something that will register on Two-Face's monitoring system without triggering the explosives. On it, she replied. Alfred is in position. Remote access to their electrical system in 3, 2, 1. Batman watched as Two-Face suddenly stiffened, touching his earpiece. The villain turned toward a laptop set up on a nearby desk, his attention momentarily diverted from the hostages. Problems with your experiment, Harvey? Batman's voice carried through the banking hall, drawing every eye upward to where he stood at the edge of the mezzanine, cape draping around him like liquid shadow. Two-Face's reaction was immediate but controlled, not surprise but satisfaction. Right on schedule, he noted, checking his watch. 43 minutes remaining. Tell me, Batman, did you choose this location through deduction or did you flip a coin? The scarred side of his mouth twisted. Or did you simply assume I'd be here personally? Your arrogance, thinking you could predict my movements. Not prediction, Batman replied calmly. Preparation. He dropped to the main floor in a controlled descent, cape billowing to slow his landing. I know about both locations, Harvey. The question is whether you're willing to let 45 innocent people die to prove a point about chance and justice. Two-Face's expression flickered, surprise quickly masked by calculated indifference. You're bluffing. You can't be in two places at once. I don't have to be. Batman took a measured step forward, gauging the guard's reaction, the positioning of the explosive devices, the tension in Two-Face's posture. Your plan has a fundamental flaw, Harvey. It assumes I play by your rules. Two-Face reached into his pocket, producing his iconic coin. Rules are what separate justice from vengeance, order from chaos. Even chance has its protocols. He flipped the coin high, catching it with practiced precision. But speaking of rules, he turned the coin to reveal the scarred side. Tails. Bad luck for someone. He pressed a button on a remote control, and one of the explosive devices began emitting a high-pitched beep. The hostages nearest to it recoiled in terror. 15-second countdown, Two-Face announced calmly. Just one device, a demonstration. Chance selected this particular bomb. Nothing personal for those nearest to it. Batman moved with controlled urgency, analyzing the device with his cowl's sensors as he approached. This isn't chance, Harvey. You're making deliberate choices while hiding behind the coin. The coin doesn't lie, Two-Face insisted, watching Batman work with apparent interest. Unlike people, unlike Gotham's justice system, unlike you with your masks and secrets. 10 seconds remained on the device's timer. Batman accessed a compartment in his utility belt, extracting specialized tools designed for exactly this kind of situation. The explosive was sophisticated, but followed standard demolition logic. A trigger mechanism connected to a charge, with redundant activation protocols. Harvey Dent understood that justice requires human judgment, Batman said as he worked, voice steady despite the time pressure. Not random chance. 5 seconds. Batman identified the primary circuit, separated it from the secondary trigger, and applied a freezing compound that crystallized the conductive material. 3 seconds. The device's electronic components seized as the temperature dropped rapidly, the timer display flickering before freezing on 0.2. Two-Face observed the diffused bomb with an expression that might have been disappointment or respect. It was impossible to tell which emotion belonged to which side of his fractured personality. Impressive, he acknowledged, but predictable. That was merely the opening statement, Counselor. The real trial is still underway. He gestured to his laptop, where security feeds showed the interior of Mercantile Bank. Your associate at the other location is equally skilled, I assume? The elderly gentleman with the remarkable composure under pressure? Batman kept his expression neutral, though inwardly he reassessed the situation. Two-Face had identified Alfred, which meant his surveillance was more sophisticated than anticipated. Alfred Pennyworth, Two-Face continued, your faithful servant, currently attempting to disarm my secondary system while pretending to be a frightened hostage. Creative, but it changes nothing. Both locations remain primed. Both timers continue counting down. What do you want, Harvey? Batman asked directly, shifting his position to maintain awareness of both Two-Face and his armed guard. This elaborate setup isn't just about random destruction. You're trying to prove something. For a moment, something flickered across Two-Face's undamaged features, a ghost of Harvey Dent's passionate conviction. That justice is blind, he replied, truly blind, not selectively blind the way Gotham's courts are, not conveniently blind the way its politicians are. He gestured to the hostages. These people facilitate financial injustice every day, but they're respected citizens. The addict who steals to survive goes to prison, while bankers who steal millions get bonuses. So your solution is to subject them to the same random justice you've embraced? Batman countered. Harvey Dent fought against corruption within the system, not by abandoning the system altogether. Two-Face's hand went to his coin almost reflexively, his fingers tracing the scarred edge. Harvey Dent died in that warehouse. What emerged understands that systems can't be fixed. They can only be balanced by opposing forces. He flipped the coin again, catching it and slapping it onto the back of his other hand. Heads. A temporary reprieve. He tapped a sequence into his laptop. 30 minutes remaining, Batman. And now, a complication. On the screen, the feed from Mercantile Bank showed a new development. One of the explosive devices had activated, its timer counting down separately from the main sequence. Another demonstration, Two-Face explained. This one at your secondary location. Let's see if your butler is as skilled at demolitions as you are. Batman's communicator crackled with Alfred's calm voice. Sir, we have a situation developing. One device has activated independently. I am assessing now. Stay focused, Alfred. Batman replied evenly, careful to betray no concern that might satisfy Two-Face. Standard containment protocol. Two-Face watched this exchange with evident satisfaction. Delegation requires trust, he observed. But trust is so easily betrayed, isn't it? Ask Harvey Dent about trust sometime. His scarred features twisted. Oh wait, you can't. He trusted Gotham's justice system, and look what happened to him. Batman kept his attention divided between Two-Face and the security feed, where Alfred was calmly working to contain the active explosive. The older man's steady hands belied his age, as he applied techniques Batman had taught him years ago. Harvey Dent wasn't destroyed by the justice system, Batman said quietly. He was targeted precisely because he was making that system work as it should, because he represented hope for Gotham. Hope? Two-Face's voice cracked slightly. Hope is the cruelest lie. It makes people believe in fairness when there is only chance. It makes them trust in systems that are designed to fail them. He gestured to the hostages. Ask them about hope. Ask how many promises their banks made to struggling families before foreclosing on their homes. On the security feed, Alfred successfully contained the active explosive at Mercantile Bank, placing it within a specialized containment unit Batman had developed for precisely such situations. The relief among the hostages there was visible even through the grainy footage. Two-Face noticed this development with a slight nod. "Impressive resources," he commented, "but we still have our main event approaching. 25 minutes until both locations face their final judgment." Batman took a calculated risk, stepping closer to Two-Face. "This isn't about banks or justice systems, Harvey. It's about control. The coin gives you the illusion of surrendering control, while actually giving you absolute power over life and death." For a moment, Two-Face's composure slipped, rage flashing across both sides of his face before the cold calculation returned. "You understand nothing," he hissed. "The coin is impartial. Unlike judges, unlike police, unlike you. Then why do you only flip it when it serves your purpose?" Batman pressed. "Why not let it decide whether to set up this entire scenario in the first place?" Two-Face's hand went to his pocket, clutching the coin possessively. "I did," he insisted, though uncertainty flickered across his undamaged features. "Every step was determined by chance, including which bank you would personally oversee," Batman continued. "Or did you choose First Gotham Trust because Janet Myers works here? Because she reminds you of Rachel?" The name struck a visible chord. Two-Face's posture stiffened, his scarred hand clenching into a fist. "Rachel is irrelevant," he snapped, though the pain in his voice suggested otherwise. "This is about systemic injustice, not personal vendettas." "Then prove it," Batman challenged. "Flip the coin right now. Heads, you end this peacefully. Tails, we continue your game." Two-Face hesitated, his internal conflict visible in the tension of his posture, the subtle twitching of his facial muscles. For a moment, Harvey Dent seemed to resurface, a flash of the man he had once been, principled, determined, uncompromising in his pursuit of justice. Then his expression hardened again. "Nice try, Batman, but this trial has its procedural rules." He checked his watch. 20 minutes remaining. And now, a change of venue. He pressed a series of keys on his laptop and the displays changed, showing both banks from exterior cameras. "The police have established perimeters as expected. Detective Bullock is coordinating at Mercantile Bank. Commissioner Gordon is 3 blocks from here, stuck in traffic." He turned to Batman with a twisted smile. Always so predictable, Gotham's finest. Batman maintained his composed exterior while inwardly reassessing. Two-Face's surveillance extended beyond the banks themselves, suggesting a more elaborate network than initially suspected. "What's your endgame, Harvey? These hostages, the explosives, the dual locations, all of it leads somewhere." "To a choice," Two-Face replied simply. "The only choice that matters in an unjust world. Chance or design, randomness or control." He produced his coin again, rolling it across his knuckles with practiced dexterity. "In 15 minutes, I flip this coin one final time. If it lands heads, I give you the disarm codes for both locations. If it lands tails, He gestured expansively. Gotham loses some bankers and gains a valuable lesson about the illusion of security. Batman's communicator vibrated subtly against his cowl, Oracle's signal that she had established something important. "And if I refuse to participate in your coin toss?" he asked, keeping Two-Face engaged. "Then both locations detonate automatically," Two-Face answered. "The choice must be surrendered to chance. That's the point of this entire exercise." His voice softened momentarily. Harvey Dent thought he could control outcomes through preparation, evidence, legal maneuvering. He was wrong. In the end, his fate came down to chance. Which side of his face would be burned, whether he would live or die. "Lived," Batman said quietly. "Part of him still exists within you, Harvey. The part that knows this is wrong." Two-Face's expression flickered again, conflict visible in his mismatched eyes. Wrong? Was it wrong when Salvatore Maroni walked free despite Harvey's perfect case against him? Was it wrong when Rachel died because someone decided her life was expendable? His voice cracked slightly. "The system is what's wrong. Chance is the only true justice." Oracle's voice came through Batman's communicator, pitched low enough that only he could hear. "I've identified his trigger mechanism. He's using a dual key system. The final detonation requires both the coin toss result and a manual authorization code. I'm working on intercepting the signal, but I need 3 more minutes." Batman gave an imperceptible nod, knowing Oracle would detect the motion through his cowl's sensors. He needed to keep Two-Face focused on their philosophical debate, rather than the technical aspects of his plan. "Harvey Dent believed in justice through due process," Batman said, stepping closer to the villain. "He understood that true justice isn't about outcomes, but about principles, giving everyone a fair hearing, examining evidence objectively, applying the law equally regardless of wealth or power. Principles without power are meaningless," Two-Face countered, though something in his tone suggested the words weren't entirely his own, as if both sides of his personality were engaged in the debate. "Harvey Dent had principles. Look where they got him." He gestured to his scarred face. "They made him Gotham's greatest district attorney," Batman replied. "They gave people hope that the system could work if those within it had the courage to stand up for what's right." Two-Face checked his watch again. 10 minutes remaining. Time for final arguments, counselor. He addressed this last comment to the room at large, his courtroom persona resurfacing. "The prosecution believes that justice is random, that systems fail, that only chance offers true impartiality. The defense believes in systems, in human judgment, in the fantasy that we can control outcomes through rules and procedures." From the group of hostages, Janet Myers spoke again. "Harvey, I remember when you prosecuted Gotham National Bank for predatory lending. You told the jury that systems fail when good people stop fighting to maintain them." Her voice was steady despite her obvious fear. "You were right then. The banks needed accountability. But this," she gestured to the explosives surrounding them, "this isn't accountability. It's just more trauma." Two-Face stared at her, his expression unreadable. "The jury will disregard that statement," he said automatically, though his voice lacked conviction. Batman used this moment of distraction to activate a specialized function in his cowl, a scanner designed to detect electrical frequencies associated with remote detonators. The data appeared in his heads-up display, confirming Oracle's analysis. The trigger system was sophisticated, but followed a recognizable pattern. "Oracle," he sub-vocalized, "I need a synchronized approach. When I give the signal, cut power to both bank locations simultaneously. 3-second window." "Ready when you are," she replied. Alfred is positioned to secure the mercantile bank trigger in the power fluctuation. Batman turned his attention back to Two-Face, who had moved to stand before his laptop again, monitoring both locations with the intensity of a chess master studying two simultaneous games. 5 minutes remaining, the villain announced. Perhaps it's time to consolidate our venues. He typed a command, and the security feed from Mercantile Bank expanded to fill the screen. Your associate has been busy, Batman. Quite resourceful for a gentleman of his age. The feed showed Alfred positioned near the main explosive array, having successfully guided several hostages to safer positions within the bank's layout. The butler's expression remained composed, though the situation was clearly tense. But resources aren't everything, Two-Face continued. Sometimes fate intervenes. He flipped his coin again, catching it and revealing the scarred side. Tails. Unfortunate for your friend. He entered a command, and one of the support columns at Mercantile Bank erupted in a controlled explosion. Not large enough to threaten the building's structural integrity, but sufficient to fill the space with dust and debris, disorienting the hostages and disrupting Alfred's methodical work. A reminder that chance favors no one, Two-Face observed calmly. Not even Batman's allies. Batman's concern for Alfred was tempered by years of experience working together. The older man had survived far worse situations and would adapt to this development with his characteristic resourcefulness. 3 minutes remaining, Two-Face announced. Time for our final deliberations. He turned to Batman, coin positioned between thumb and forefinger. Any last arguments before we leave this in the hands of chance? Batman had maneuvered himself into position, equidistant from Two-Face, the guard and the main explosive trigger. His timing would need to be perfect. Just one, he replied evenly. Your entire premise is flawed, Harvey. True randomness doesn't exist in human affairs. Every flip of your coin is influenced by countless variables. The force you apply, the air resistance, the microscopic imperfections in the coin's surface. He took a measured step closer. You're not surrendering to chance. You're creating the illusion of chance to justify actions you've already decided to take. Two-Face's expression darkened, the scarred side of his mouth twisting in anger. The coin doesn't lie, he insisted, though a flicker of doubt crossed his undamaged features. It can't be corrupted, bribed, or intimidated. But it can be manipulated, Batman countered, just like any system. The difference is that systems can be improved through transparency and accountability. Your coin is just a prop in a performance only you can see. "Some minute," Two-Face snarled, his composure cracking. 1 minute until the final judgment. Batman saw the moment approaching, Two-Face's emotional state deteriorating, his focus narrowing to the coin and his perception of Batman as a threat to his worldview. The guard had shifted position, sensing his employer's agitation, his weapon trained more directly on Batman now. "Oracle," Batman sub-vocalized. "On my mark." Two-Face raised his coin, preparing for the final flip. "Let chance decide," he declared, his voice carrying both conviction and desperation. The only true arbiter in an unjust world. "Now," Batman whispered. In the split second before Two-Face could flip his coin, both banks plunged into darkness. The emergency lights flickered and died, leaving only the faint glow of exit signs. In the sudden darkness, Batman moved with practiced precision. 3 smoke pellets deployed in strategic locations, filling the space with disorienting vapor. The guard fired blindly, his shots going wide as Batman closed the distance. A precise strike to the wrist disarmed him. A follow-up blow to the solar plexus incapacitated him without causing permanent damage. Two-Face's reaction was predictable, lunging for the detonator rather than retreating. Batman intercepted him with calculated force, careful to control rather than injure. The villain fought with the fury of his fractured psyche, his technique shifting between Harvey Dent's formal boxing training and the brutal street-fighting style of Two-Face. "You can't stop Chance," Two-Face snarled, struggling to reach his coin which had fallen to the floor in the confusion. "Justice will be served." "Yes," Batman agreed, securing the villain's wrists with specialized restraints. "But not by random chance, by deliberate choices and careful action." The power returned gradually, emergency systems cycling back online. Oracle's voice came through Batman's communicator. "Both locations secured. Alfred has disabled the secondary trigger system at Mercantile. GCPD is moving in now." Two-Face stared at Batman with mingled hatred and something that might have been respect. "You cheated," he accused, though his voice lacked real conviction. "You manipulated the variables, corrupted the experiment." "I made a choice," Batman replied quietly, retrieving Two-Face's coin from where it had fallen. He held it up between them, its scarred surface catching the emergency lighting. The same choice Harvey Dent made every day as district attorney, to fight for justice through deliberate action, not random chance. For a moment something shifted in Two-Face's expression, a flicker of the man he had once been. "Rachel would have agreed with you," he said softly, the undamaged side of his face momentarily dominating his features. "She always believed systems could work if good people fought for them." "She was right," Batman affirmed, hearing the approaching sirens as GCPD vehicles converged on the bank. "And part of you still believes that too, Harvey?" Two-Face didn't respond, his expression closing off again as the fractured personality reasserted control. But the moment of connection had been real, however brief. A reminder that beneath the scarred exterior and obsessive behavior, elements of Harvey Dent remained. As police officers secured the scene and led Two-Face away, Batman observed from the shadows. The hostages were being tended to, their relief palpable as the danger passed. Janet Myers caught his eye briefly, giving a small nod of understanding, acknowledging not just her rescue, but the complex nature of the man who had threatened her. "Alfred is safe," Oracle reported. "All hostages accounted for at both locations. Detective Bullock sends his regards, in his own colorful way." "Tell him I appreciate the sentiment," Batman replied, already moving toward the exit. The night's work wasn't finished. There would be evidence to analyze, systems to check, assurances to make that Two-Face's return to Arkham was properly managed. But as he grappled to a nearby rooftop, Batman paused to look back at the bank building below. The scene represented one of Gotham's eternal struggles, the battle between chaos and order, between random destruction and structured justice. Two-Face embodied that conflict in its most literal form, his fractured psyche a microcosm of the city's own dual nature. The coin still rested in Batman's palm, a simple object given overwhelming significance by one man's trauma and obsession. Both sides caught the moonlight as he turned it, the unmarred face and the scarred one equally visible. Like Harvey Dent himself, the coin contained multiple truths simultaneously. With a deliberate motion, Batman placed the coin in a specialized compartment in his utility belt, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of Harvey Dent's tragedy, of the thin line between justice and vengeance, of the importance of choices made consciously rather than surrendered to chance. The city stretched before him, its nighttime tapestry of lights and shadows as complex as the human lives contained within its boundaries. Batman fired his grapnel toward the nearest building, ready to continue his patrol. In a city defined by duality, wealth and poverty, corruption and integrity, darkness and light, his path remained singular, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, regardless of what side of fortune's coin they happened to occupy. As he swung through the night air, the weight of Two-Face's coin rested against his side, a small burden compared to the greater weight of responsibility he had chosen to bear, not by chance or fate, but by deliberate choice. The choice that defined him, that separated him from those he fought. The choice to stand between innocence and harm, regardless of the personal cost. Gotham's skyline welcomed him back into its embrace, the city neither fully corrupt nor fully redeemed, but always, eternally, worth fighting for. The memory of Two-Face's coin toss faded as Batman returned to the present moment, his focus shifting to the new threat emerging beneath Gotham's streets. The city's duality, its heights and depths, was never more apparent than when moving from its glittering financial district to the forgotten tunnels of its underground, as the last echoes of Harvey Dent's fractured justice receded from his thoughts. Batman prepared himself for a different kind of psychological warfare. Dr. Jonathan Crane, known in darker circles as Scarecrow, had been spotted in the abandoned subway sections beneath the East End. Reports of strange mists and terrified vagrants suggested the fear-obsessed villain was testing a new formula, turning the underground passages into a laboratory of phobias. Where Two-Face had challenged Batman's sense of moral choice, Scarecrow would test something more primal, the ability to face fear itself in the suffocating darkness below Gotham's foundation. The rain fell in sheets across Gotham, washing grime from gargoyles into overflowing gutters. Bruce Wayne stood at his penthouse windows, watching lightning illuminate the cityscape. His phone buzzed. "Alfred." "Sir, I believe you'll want to see the news." Bruce's television flickered to life, showing GCN's breaking coverage of police cordoning off Gotham Central Station. Evacuation underway after an unidentified chemical was detected. Authorities report a subway train has gone missing with approximately 47 passengers unaccounted for. The broadcast cut to Commissioner Gordon at an impromptu press conference. "We're establishing a perimeter and working with transit authorities to locate the missing train. We have reason to believe this may be connected to..." Gordon was interrupted by every screen in the station displaying the same image, a burlap mask with hollow eyes staring directly into the camera. Gotham City. The voice was distorted, raspy, academic yet unhinged, always rushing, never stopping to confront what truly terrifies you. Bruce was already moving toward the secret elevator to the Batcave. "Tonight, you'll have time to consider your deepest fears. I've commandeered Train 61 with its passengers. They are now my guests, in the forgotten tunnels beneath your feet. The old Gotham Underground, abandoned decades ago." In the Batcave, Bruce suited up as the broadcast continued. "Batman, I know you're watching. Come find us. Alone, any police presence in the tunnels, any attempt to evacuate the station above, and I'll flood not only the train compartments but the entire main station with my newest creation." The masked figure held up a vial of luminescent green liquid. "A fear toxin variant that makes my previous formulations seem like children's nightmares." Alfred approached with the cowl. "Sir, preliminary chemical analysis suggests this isn't merely a bluff. The trace amounts detected match Dr. Crane's previous work, but with significant modifications." Batman pulled on the cowl. "He's been experimenting again. The samples appear to bind specifically to neural receptors associated with personal trauma and memory." Batman checked his utility belt, ensuring his rebreather and antitoxin injectors were stocked. Crane's always been interested in personalized fear. Now he's found a way to chemically induce it. On screen, Scarecrow continued, "You have 3 hours, Batman, before I release my toxin to my captive audience. Let's see what truly haunts the man behind the mask." "Alfred, pull up the old transit maps. There must be access points Crane used to divert the train." "Already done, sir. The abandoned Monarch Theatre station would be your closest entry point. It was sealed off in the 1980s when the new lines were built, but it connects to the old network." Batman stared at the location marker, directly beneath the alley where his parents had been murdered. With Scarecrow, nothing was ever coincidental. "I've also modified your cowl's filtration system," Alfred said. "It should provide additional protection against aerosol compounds, though I can't guarantee it will fully counteract Dr. Crane's new formula. It will have to do." "Master Bruce." Alfred's voice softened. "Dr. Crane specializes in exploiting psychological vulnerabilities. Your own trauma is precisely what he's counting on." Batman moved toward the Batmobile. "Which is why I need to remain focused. I'll need you on comms, of course, and might I suggest taking the Batcycle instead? The old access tunnels will be too narrow for the Batmobile." Batman nodded. "Keep Gordon updated, but make sure he maintains the perimeter, no officers underground." "And what should I tell him about your plan?" Batman mounted the Batcycle, the engine rumbling to life. "Tell him I'm going to give Scarecrow exactly what he wants." The abandoned Monarch Theatre station entrance had been bricked over decades ago. Batman placed shaped demolition charges precisely along the mortar lines, stepping back as they detonated with controlled pops. Bricks tumbled inward, revealing a dark maw that exhaled the stale breath of forgotten tunnels. His tactical light illuminated crumbling Art Deco tiles and tarnished brass fixtures from Gotham's more elegant era. "I've accessed the old Transit Authority archives," Alfred said through the cowl's communication system. The Monarch Theatre station connected to the central loop, which intersects with the abandoned Carson line. If Dr. Crane diverted the train, that's likely where he's holding it. Batman descended the crumbling stairs. The station platform remained frozen in time, peeling posters, newspaper kiosks with yellowed headlines. One poster caught his eye, The Mark of Zorro, the last film his family had seen together. "Alfred, Crane didn't choose this entry point by accident." "I suspected as much, sir. He's attempting to unsettle you before you've even encountered his toxin." Batman moved toward the edge of the platform. "He's been studying me, my history, my traumas. All the more reason to proceed with caution." Batman dropped to the track level, the loose gravel crunching under his boots. As he moved forward, he activated thermal imaging, scanning for any signs of life or machinery. 50 yards in, he noticed something peculiar, a faint mist hovering close to the ground. "Alfred, I'm encountering some kind of vapor. Your cowl sensors are registering trace amounts of an unknown compound. Not enough to be dangerous, but I'd suggest using your rebreather." Batman fitted the rebreather over his mouth and nose. "He's testing dilution levels, seeing how far his toxin will spread through the tunnels." As he continued, he became aware of sounds that shouldn't exist. Faint whispers, distant footsteps keeping pace with his own, occasional childlike laughter quickly silenced. "Alfred, are you picking up any other presence down here?" "Negative. Your cowl's sensors show no heat signatures within a 100-yard radius. Why?" Batman paused, listening intently. The sounds stopped. Nothing, just being thorough. The junction loomed ahead, a cavernous space where multiple tunnel lines converged. Ancient switching equipment stood like industrial sculptures. The Carson line will be the southwest tunnel, Alfred instructed. But sir, I'm detecting an electrical current running through the third rail of that line. Crane's restored power, selectively. Batman examined the junction's control panel, finding it recently disturbed. He's been planning this for months. As Batman prepared to enter the Carson Line tunnel, Scarecrow's voice echoed through speakers. Batman, welcome to your journey inward. I see you've chosen the path of your origin. How fitting. Batman remained silent, scanning for monitoring devices. The fear of a child who lost everything. It never really leaves, does it? Just gets buried, like these tunnels, beneath layers of control and discipline. But it's always there, waiting in the darkness. He's trying to get under your skin, sir, Alfred cautioned. I've prepared a special experience for you, Scarecrow continued. By the time you reach those poor, frightened passengers, we'll have uncovered what truly terrifies the Batman. The speakers fell silent, replaced by the soft hiss of gas releasing from ceiling vents. Alfred, he's pumping toxin into the junction. The rebreather should filter it, but I'd advise not lingering. Batman moved swiftly toward the Carson Line tunnel, but froze at its entrance. Standing in the center of the track was a small boy in an expensive coat, his face obscured by shadow. Batman's rational mind knew this was an illusion, the first effects of Crane's toxin seeping through his protective gear, but the image struck with visceral force. Sir, your vitals just spiked. Batman forced himself forward, walking directly through the apparition, which dissolved into wisps of green vapor. I'm fine, he growled. The toxin is already affecting my visual cortex. Minimal exposure, but effective. Should you administer the antitoxin? Not yet. I need to conserve doses. This is just the beginning. Batman entered the Carson Line tunnel, where emergency lights cast the passageway in an eerie, intermittent glow. Every 20 yards, he passed freshly painted graffiti. Crude drawings of bats with torn wings, disturbing nursery rhymes, and repeated words in Crane's handwriting. What do you see in the dark, Batman? What sees you back? The tunnel began to feel increasingly claustrophobic, the walls seemingly contracting with each step. Batman focused on his breathing, on the mission, on the innocent lives at stake. Ahead, a thin wire stretched across the tunnel at ankle height. Booby trap, Batman muttered, stepping over it and looking up to see canisters rigged to the ceiling. He's placed these obstacles to slow you down, Alfred observed, or to ensure I receive incremental doses of the toxin. Batman carefully disarmed the trigger. The longer I'm down here, the more compromised I become. As Batman continued deeper, the emergency lights flickered more erratically, creating a strobe effect. In these stuttering glimpses, shadows seemed to move independently, stretching toward him between moments of darkness. Alfred, I need you to keep talking to me. Your voice will help me distinguish reality from hallucination. Of course, sir. Perhaps I could regale you with the fascinating history of underground transit systems. Despite everything, Batman felt the corner of his mouth twitch. That will do. As Alfred began his impromptu lecture, Batman disarmed 2 more traps, the toxin's effects intensified. He now occasionally saw faces in the tunnel walls, heard his name whispered from empty passages, felt phantom touches on his exposed jawline. The tunnel opened into another station platform, Carson Heights. Unlike the Monarch station, this one showed signs of recent activity. Portable floodlights illuminated a macabre display at the center. A life-size diorama had been arranged, 2 adult mannequins lying on the ground with red paint splashed across their chests. Between them, a child mannequin kneeled in despair. All three wore crude bat masks. "It appears Dr. Crane has recreated your parents' murder," Alfred said quietly. "Sir, perhaps this would be a good time to administer the antitoxin." "No," Batman growled. "This is exactly what he wants. To force me to use up my defenses before the real confrontation." As he approached, he realized something was off. "Alfred, these aren't mannequins. They're people." "Good Lord, are they? Unconscious, drugged." Batman checked vital signs. "They're alive, but heavily sedated. Crane has dressed them to resemble my parents and me. He's forcing you to relive your trauma through proxies." Batman administered a mild stimulant to each victim. They should regain consciousness within an hour. By then, this will be over. He arranged the unconscious individuals away from the center, then turned his attention to the continuing tunnel. "According to the transit maps," Alfred said, "you're approximately halfway to the intersection where I believe Train 61 has been diverted." "But sir, these psychological tactics will only escalate." "I'm counting on it." Batman's voice hardened. "Crane's focus on my past means he's revealing his own obsessions. That makes him predictable." As Batman prepared to continue, pearls rolled across the floor, creating a trail leading toward the darkness. "Don't follow them, sir." "I don't intend to." Batman instead moved to a maintenance door at the side of the platform. There should be service tunnels running parallel to the main line. Less theatrical, but potentially less trapped as well. The maintenance door yielded to his lockpicks, revealing a narrow utility passageway. Batman squeezed through, leaving behind Crane's psychological stage set. "Well done, sir, though I suspect Dr. Crane anticipated this move as well." "Undoubtedly, but forcing him to adjust his plans may reveal weaknesses." After several minutes of navigating the claustrophobic passage, he heard a train whistle, followed by the distorted sound of a public address system. "Alfred, I can hear the train. It can't be more than a quarter mile ahead." The service tunnel eventually opened onto a small maintenance platform, overlooking a larger station area. Below, illuminated by emergency lighting, sat Train 61. The subway train was motionless, its doors sealed, windows fogged from the inside. Surrounding it were modified aerosol dispersers, each connected to a central control panel near the front of the train. Standing beside that panel, his back to Batman, was a lanky figure in tattered academic attire, burlap mask in place, adjusting dials with scientific precision. "Alfred, I've found them. Crane has the train in an old express station. I count dozens of dispersal devices positioned around the cars. Can you see the passengers?" Batman zoomed in with his cowl's optics. "They're inside, conscious but panicking. Crane has released small amounts of the toxin into specific cars. He's testing different concentrations. A living laboratory, despicable." Batman scanned for the optimal approach. "The dispersal system is centralized. If I can disable the main control panel, I can prevent full deployment. And Dr. Crane will be expecting me from the main tunnel, not the maintenance platform." Batman removed a batarang. "I'm going to..." His words cut off as a horrific sensation overcame him. Thousands of insects crawling beneath his suit, biting into his skin. Batman stiffened, fighting the hallucination. "Sir, your vitals are spiking again." With tremendous effort, Batman steadied his breathing. "The toxin concentration is higher here. He's saturated the area around the train." The crawling sensation intensified, joined by whispers directly in his ear. his father's voice, his mother's, Alfred's, all speaking simultaneously in disappointed tones about his failures. Batman forced his hand to the antitoxin injector on his belt, administering a dose. Within seconds, the hallucinations began to recede. "I've used one dose," he reported, "but now I understand what we're dealing with. The toxin adapts to the victim's deepest insecurities." Batman raised the batarang, taking aim at the control panel. Before he could throw, Scarecrow suddenly turned, looking directly at his position. "I've been waiting for you, Batman," Crane called. "Did you enjoy my exhibits? I spent considerable time researching your psychological profile." Batman remained still, assessing whether Crane could actually see him. "Your fear signature is quite distinctive," Scarecrow continued, pointing to a device in his hand. "This sensor detects the specific neurochemical markers produced by human terror. Yours light up my readings, even through your vaunted self-control." Batman launched a smoke pellet, then fired his grapnel to swing around the station's perimeter. "Running won't help," Scarecrow called out. "I've created this environment specifically for you. Every surface is coated with contact agents that will penetrate even your suit given enough exposure." Batman landed behind a support column on the same level as the train. The passengers were clearly visible, some pounding desperately on the glass, others huddled in corners, fighting invisible assailants. "Alfred, the passengers are deteriorating. Crane has been exposing them to incremental doses, building their terror. The antitoxin won't help them at this stage. They need fresh air and sedation. I need to disable those dispersers first." Scarecrow's voice came closer. "Would you like to know what they're seeing, Batman? Each person's nightmare is uniquely tailored. The broker in Car 3 is watching his skin dissolve from radiation poisoning. The young mother in Car 5 sees her children transforming into venomous snakes." Batman moved silently toward the control panel. "But they're merely the opening act," Scarecrow continued. "You're the main event. Tell me, are the bats coming for you yet? Can you feel their wings brushing against your face?" On cue, Batman's vision darkened as bat-like shapes seemed to swoop from the ceiling. He forced himself to focus on concrete reality, the weight of his cape, the solid floor beneath his feet, the mission parameters. "Sir," Alfred's voice cut through. "His control panel appears to have a fail-safe system. If Crane loses consciousness or moves too far from the panel, it may trigger automatic dispersal." Batman adjusted his approach. He couldn't simply neutralize Scarecrow. He needed to coax him into deactivating the system first. "You know, Dr. Crane," Batman called out. "For someone obsessed with fear, your own phobias are remarkably transparent." Scarecrow stiffened, trying to locate the source of Batman's voice. "Your elaborate staging, your meticulous research into my past, it reveals more about you than about me. Psychoanalyzing me, Batman." Scarecrow laughed. "How desperate. Your fear is spiking. My sensors don't lie." Batman moved to another position. What happened at Gotham University wasn't about academic jealousy. It was about your fear of insignificance, your terror that your work would never matter. Scarecrow whirled, raising his arm to spray toxin. "You know nothing about me. I know you were the frightened child who learned to weaponize his own terror," Batman continued, moving to yet another location. "I know you believe fear is the only truth. But you're wrong." Scarecrow hissed. "Look at them." He gestured toward the train. "Every one of them proving my thesis. Fear strips away civilization, reveals the animal beneath. That's not what I see." Batman was now positioned directly behind the control panel. I see people fighting their fears, protecting each other, even now. Your experiment is failing, Crane. With a cry of rage, Scarecrow turned toward the control panel and found himself face to face with Batman. Impossible, he whispered. The toxin concentration in this area, you should be catatonic with terror. Batman's hand shot out, gripping Scarecrow's wrist before he could activate his toxin dispenser. Fear is a powerful tool, Doctor, but only if you let it control you. Scarecrow struggled, his free hand reaching toward the control panel. Stay back. One press of this button and everyone on that train experiences their worst nightmares at once, including you. Batman's voice was deadly calm. Your failsafe works both ways, doesn't it? If the system fully activates, you'll be caught in the dispersal too. No mask can filter that concentration. Uncertainty flickered in Scarecrow's eyes. Batman pressed his advantage. Your sensors. Show me. Reluctantly, Scarecrow held up the device. A modified heart rate monitor displaying fluctuating graphs. Your formula is flawed, Batman said. It triggers the fear response, but can't sustain it against a prepared mind. No, that's impossible, Scarecrow insisted. I've perfected it. Breaks down too quickly. A fundamental error in your research. In that instant of distraction, Batman struck, sending Scarecrow staggering away from the control panel. Batman was immediately at the controls, fingers flying over the interface. Alfred, I need the shutdown sequence for this model of dispersal system. Working on it, sir. Try entering the Transit Authority override. 7399 Alpha Echo. Batman punched in the code. The control panel beeped but remained active. He's modified it, needs his biometric signature. Scarecrow lunged back toward Batman. You can't stop it. Only I can abort the sequence. Batman sidestepped, allowing Scarecrow's momentum to carry him past, then delivered a strike to the back of his knees. As Crane fell, Batman grabbed his arm, forcing his hand onto the biometric scanner. No! Scarecrow howled as the system recognized his print. Command prompt, Alfred. Try system abort, followed by the current time. System abort, 247. Batman commanded. The control panel flashed green. Dispersal sequence terminated. Ventilation system engaging. Throughout the station, the dispersers powered down, and massive fans activated somewhere in the tunnel system. No, 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 Scarecrow thrashed in Batman's grip. You've ruined everything. Years of research. Batman secured Scarecrow's wrists. Your research will continue, Doctor at Arkham, under proper supervision. With Scarecrow subdued, Batman turned his attention to the train, releasing the emergency mechanisms at each door. As fresh air began cycling through, he administered mild sedatives to the most severely affected passengers. Alfred, contact Gordon. Tell him the situation is contained. We need medical teams ready at Gotham Central. I'll drive the train back myself. Very good, sir. And Dr. Crane? Batman looked at the restrained figure now muttering chemical formulas. He'll be joining us for the ride. I want him to see his test subjects recover, to understand that fear isn't the final word, a poetic justice of sorts. Something like that. Batman moved toward the train's control cabin. And Alfred? Yes, sir. Thank you for being my anchor. Always, Master Bruce. Always. The train crawled through dark tunnels with painful slowness. In the control cabin, Batman maintained a steady hand on the throttle while monitoring the passenger cars through security screens. The sedatives had calmed the most severe cases. while others were beginning to emerge from their hallucinations. Scarecrow sat bound in the corner, his mask removed to reveal the gaunt features of Dr. Jonathan Crane. "You've only delayed the inevitable," Crane said. "Fear always wins in the end. It's the baseline of human consciousness." Batman focused on navigating through a damaged section of track, the wheels screeching in protest. "They'll remember this experience for the rest of their lives," Crane continued. "Long after they've forgotten your heroics, they'll wake in the night, drenched in sweat, reliving what they saw today. What they'll remember," Batman finally responded, "is that they survived, that their fears didn't consume them." Crane scoffed. "Typical heroic delusion. You can't defeat fear, Batman. You can only channel it, as you've done with your little costume drama. Tell me, when you put on that mask, which side of it are you hiding from?" Batman adjusted their course as they approached a junction, the ancient brakes groaning. "You wear your fear so obviously," Crane pressed. "The bat, symbol of the dark, of childhood nightmares. You became the very thing that terrified you. Classic immersion therapy, if somewhat extreme." The train lurched over damaged rail, momentarily throwing Crane against the cabin wall. "I could help you, you know, professionally. Your case is fascinating. Trauma response converted into vigilante compulsion. Save your analysis for your Arkham therapist," Batman replied, checking the vital signs of the passengers. Crane's eyes narrowed. "You think I haven't been studying you throughout this encounter? Your physiological responses, your coping mechanisms. Even now, you're exhibiting classic symptoms of hyper-control as a fear response." Batman's hand tightened slightly on the throttle. "Sir," Alfred said through the comm, "you're approaching the junction to the active transit lines. Maintenance records indicate the switching mechanism may be inoperative due to age." "Understood. I'll need to manually engage the switch. Allow me to express my professional admiration," Crane said, watching Batman prepare to exit. "You've built an impressive psychological armor, but even the strongest armor has joints, vulnerabilities where the pieces connect." Batman secured the throttle at its lowest setting. "Stay put, Doctor. Consider what you might say to those passengers when we reach the station." "Oh, I have plenty to say to them," Crane smiled thinly. "My research notes alone will fill volumes." Batman opened the cabin door and climbed onto the front of the train. The switching mechanism was frozen with rust, set to direct them deeper into the abandoned tunnels rather than up toward the active lines. As the train continued its slow advance, Batman leapt from the front, landing beside the switch. The ancient manual lever resisted his first attempt. "Alfred, the switch is jammed. I need more leverage. There should be a maintenance toolkit in the housing near the junction." Batman located the rusted box, found a heavy wrench, and applied it to the mechanism, muscles straining against decades of resistance. With a shriek of tortured metal, the switch began to move. Batman threw his full weight against it until it locked into position, aligning the track toward the active transit system. He turned back toward the approaching train and froze. The control cabin was empty. "Alfred, Crane is loose on the train." Batman sprinted back, leaping onto the rear car and forcing open the emergency door. Inside, passengers looked up in alarm, their faces still bearing the after effects of terror. "Stay calm," Batman instructed, moving swiftly through the car. "We're almost back to the main station. Medical help is waiting." A woman clutched at his arm. "There was a man, thin, wild-made. He went that way." She pointed toward the connecting door. "He was saying something about unfinished business." Batman moved through the cars methodically. In the fifth car, he found an abandoned restraint. the lock picked with improvised tools. "Sir," Alfred's voice had new urgency. "The train is accelerating." Batman felt it too, the gradually increasing momentum. "He's overridden the throttle limiter. At this velocity, the train will derail when it hits the curved junction to the main line." Batman pushed through panicking passengers as the train's movement became noticeably faster, the ancient wheels screaming against rails they were never designed to travel at such speeds. In the third car, he found a passenger slumped unconscious, a transit authority employee, his jacket removed. "He's disguised himself as transit staff," Batman reported. In the second car, the connecting door to the control cabin had been sealed shut. Batman could see Crane through the small window, now wearing the transit employee's jacket, his hands manipulating the controls with manic energy. "I need options, Alfred. The emergency brake system can be activated from any car. There should be a red panel." "Found it." Batman smashed the glass covering the emergency brake handle. Crane's voice suddenly blared over the PA system. "I wouldn't do that, Batman. Emergency braking at this speed will cause catastrophic decompression in the toxin canisters I've placed throughout the train. One final experiment. What happens when they receive the full, undiluted dose?" Batman's hand hesitated. "He's bluffing, Alfred. The dispersal system was disabled at the station." "Indeed, but he may have had backup canisters. Contingency plans are rather his forte." Through the window, Batman could see Crane's triumphant smile as he gestured to several small devices attached beneath the seats in the control cabin. "Even now, you hesitate," Crane's voice continued, weighing probabilities, calculating risks, the cold logic of fear. The train was now hurtling toward the junction, the curved track visible in the distance. At their current speed, derailment was certain. Batman released the emergency brake handle and stepped back, scanning for alternatives. "Sir, you have approximately 40 seconds before the train reaches the curve." Batman turned to the windows. "Alfred, what's the integrity rating of the subway car glass?" Standard Transit Authority specifications would indicate tempered safety glass, designed to withstand significant impact but ultimately breakable under enough force, exactly. Batman turned to the nearest passengers. "Everyone, move to the rear of the car, now." As they complied, Batman placed a small thermite charge at the center of the front window, then backed away. "Fire in the hole," he warned, before triggering the charge. The glass exploded outward. Wind immediately tore through the car as the train continued to accelerate. Batman moved to the opening, fired his grapnel toward the tunnel ceiling, and launched himself through, swinging in a wide arc that brought him onto the roof of the lead car. The wind threatened to tear him from his position as he crawled forward, but he maintained his grip. Reaching the front, he swung down directly in front of the control cabin window, coming face to face with a startled Crane. Using his momentum, Batman crashed through the glass. Crane scrambled backward, reaching for the throttle controls. "It's too late," he shouted. "We've passed the point of no return." Batman seized Crane by his stolen jacket, lifting him away from the controls. "There's always a choice." With his free hand, Batman examined the control panel. Crane had disengaged the standard braking system, but the emergency override remained, requiring both hands to activate. "Alfred, I need both hands for the emergency stop. Can you trigger a remote taser pulse through my gauntlets?" "Certainly, sir. On your mark." Now, Batman activated the pulse, sending an electrical current through his gloves. Crane convulsed and went limp. Batman grabbed the dual emergency brake controls, twisting them simultaneously in opposite directions. The train's emergency braking system engaged with a deafening screech. The deceleration threw Batman forward against the control panel, while Crane's unconscious form slid across the floor. Throughout the train, passengers were hurled forward despite Batman's warning to brace themselves. "Sir, at your current deceleration rate..." "I know." Batman maintained his grip on the controls. "We'll still hit the curve too fast." The junction loomed ahead. Batman made a split-second decision, releasing the brake controls and hoisting Crane over his shoulder. "Alfred, the first car is going to derail. I need to separate it from the rest of the train." Batman reached the coupling between the first and second cars, placing Crane on the metal surface. Taking a small cutting torch from his utility belt, he sliced through the coupling's main support. The train continued to decelerate, but the curve was now only seconds away. With a final burst, the coupling separated, the lead car immediately beginning to pull away as its wheels lost their electrical connection. Batman grabbed Crane and leapt back to the second car as the gap widened. Behind them, the now disconnected lead car entered the curved junction, its momentum carrying it off the rails. It crashed against the tunnel wall, sending vibrations through the entire structure. The remaining cars, still braking and now free from the pull of the lead car, navigated the curve with a teeth-rattling screech but remained on the tracks, gradually slowing to a complete stop just beyond the junction, now pointed upward toward the active transit system. "Alfred, we're through the junction. Train is stopped, lead car separated and derailed. No casualties." "Most impressive, sir." Batman secured Crane with fresh restraints, then moved through the remaining cars, checking on the passengers. "Emergency services are accessing the tunnels now," Alfred reported. "They should reach your position within minutes." Batman found a young transit worker among the passengers. "Can you get these cars moving again, slowly, just enough to reach the main station?" The worker nodded uncertainly. "System seems intact. If the track ahead is clear, we should be able to limp in." "Good." Batman handed him a small device. "This will signal the main station that you're approaching. Tell them the passengers need medical attention for fear toxin exposure." "What about him?" The worker gestured toward Crane. "He's coming with me, a different route." As emergency personnel approached, Batman hoisted Crane over his shoulder and moved toward a maintenance access ladder. "Alfred, have the Batmobile meet me at access point 17B and tell Gordon I have a special delivery for Arkham's high secretary wing." 2 weeks later, Bruce Wayne stood at his penthouse window, watching the city lights emerge as dusk settled over Gotham. His body still ached from the underground ordeal, contusions and sprains that Alfred had meticulously treated. On the television, Vicky Vale reported from outside Gotham General Hospital. The last of the patients exposed to Dr. Jonathan Crane's fear toxin have been released today, with doctors reporting no expected long-term physiological effects. However, many victims have already sought psychological counseling to deal with the traumatic hallucinations they experienced. The camera showed a group of survivors gathered outside. One woman stepped forward. "We've started a support group," she explained. "What we went through, it's not something you can just explain to someone who wasn't there. But we're helping each other cope, day by day." Bruce turned as Alfred entered with coffee. "The resilience of ordinary people continues to astound, doesn't it, sir?" Alfred remarked. "It shouldn't," Bruce replied. "Not after all we've seen, perhaps. But I find it reassuring nonetheless." Alfred gestured toward the screen. "They're rebuilding their sense of security from the ground up, much like you did after your own trauma." A rather poetic parallel. Bruce's expression darkened slightly. Crane would have appreciated the poetry. He always viewed fear as the great equalizer. Alfred lifted a tablet displaying security footage from Arkham Asylum. Through the high-resolution feed, they could see Crane in his cell, sitting perfectly still, staring at the wall. He hasn't spoken since his arrival, Alfred noted. Dr. Leyland reports he appears to be conducting some form of internal psychological experiment. Bruce studied the image thoughtfully. He was exposed to his own toxin during the crash, not enough to incapacitate him, but enough to linger in his system. You think he's experiencing continued effects? I think he's finally confronting his own fears, instead of just studying everyone else's. On the television, the news had shifted to footage of Batman emerging from the underground with an unconscious Scarecrow. Grainy images captured by security cameras near the transit access point. Some questions remain, Vale was saying, about how Batman knew of Scarecrow's plot and whether city officials could have prevented the hijacking with better security protocols. Bruce muted the broadcast. We need to review the Transit Authority's security systems. Crane shouldn't have been able to access those tunnels in the first place. Already underway, Alfred assured him. Wayne Enterprises has, coincidentally, offered to fund a complete overhaul of the subway security network. Bruce nodded, then winced slightly as he rotated his shoulder where a bruise had blossomed during the confrontation. You should rest, sir. The city is quiet tonight. Temporarily, Bruce moved to the concealed elevator that would take him to the Batcave. But fear is a powerful motivator, Alfred, for criminals as well as the innocent. Indeed, though I find myself wondering what Dr. Crane himself truly fears. Bruce stepped into the elevator, his expression hardening into the familiar lines that presaged the Batman. Everyone fears something, Alfred. Even Scarecrow. And you, sir? The elevator doors began to close. I fear what happens when good people do nothing. That's why I can't rest. Not yet. As the elevator descended, Bruce closed his eyes, briefly acknowledging the lingering traces of Crane's toxin still working through his system. The hallucinations had faded, but the heightened awareness of his own psychological vulnerabilities remained. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he could still see the phantom boy in the expensive coat, standing on the abandoned tracks. But now, instead of fear, the image evoked resolve, a reminder of why the Batman existed. The elevator reached the Batcave, doors opening to reveal the vast underground complex with its gleaming technology and shadowed recesses. Bruce stepped out, moving toward the costume vault where the Bat waited, patient and eternal. Fear was indeed a powerful force, he reflected, but so was the will to face it, night after night, in the darkness beneath Gotham. Meanwhile, in Arkham Asylum's high-security wing, Jonathan Crane sat cross-legged on his cot, eyes closed in meditation. The orderlies had grown accustomed to this nightly ritual, noting it in their logs as subject engaged in self-hypnosis. What they couldn't see was the intricate landscape unfolding behind Crane's eyelids. A detailed mental reconstruction of his underground laboratory, every beaker and notebook precisely where he had left them, every formula and observation preserved in his eidetic memory. In this internal sanctuary, Crane moved freely, reviewing the data from what he now called the Batman experiment, analyzing every reaction throughout their underground confrontation. Fascinating, he whispered to himself. The subject displays remarkable resilience to traditional fear triggers, yet exhibits unmistakable autonomic responses to specific iconography. In his mind, he adjusted a molecular model, the structure of his fear toxin, modified based on the results he had observed. A soft tap at his cell door interrupted his concentration. Outside stood an orderly, new judging by the pristine uniform and nervous demeanor. "Medication time, Dr. Crane," the man said, voice hushed as he operated the secure pass-through drawer. Crane smiled thinly. Rather late for the evening round. The orderly didn't meet his gaze. Special prescription, direct from Dr. Leland. Crane approached the drawer as it opened to reveal a small paper cup containing 2 unfamiliar pills. The orderly fidgeted. I need to witness you taking them. Crane studied the man more carefully, the slight tremor in his left hand, the faint sheen of perspiration, the subtle irregularities in his uniform's fit. Not an orderly at all. Of course, Crane said, taking the cup. We must follow protocol. He raised the cup to his lips, then paused. Tell me, do you ever experience nightmares? The kind that leave you gasping in the dark, convinced that something is watching from the corners of your room? The man's eyes widened slightly. Just take the medication, doctor. I have a professional interest, Crane continued. Fear fascinates me, its mechanisms, its manifestations, how it can be distilled, concentrated. He looked pointedly at the pills. Delivered. The false orderly's composure cracked. They said you'd want these. Indeed I did, Crane interrupted smoothly. But arrangements change. Tell your employers that Dr. Crane is pursuing a different methodology now. BB won't be happy. Fear rarely makes one happy, Crane replied. That's rather the point. The man retreated, disappearing down the corridor. Crane returned to his cot, resuming his cross-legged position with a satisfied expression. Batman had shown him something important. Fear wasn't merely about triggering panic. In its purest form, it was about transformation, about what emerged from the crucible of terror. The vigilante had faced his darkest fears in those underground passages and emerged not broken, but somehow strengthened. A psychological anomaly that demanded further investigation. Crane smiled in the darkness of his cell, fingers lightly tracing formulas on the thin mattress beneath him. Everyone fears something, he whispered, echoing Batman's unheard words from weeks earlier. Above Arkham, clouds parted briefly to reveal the night sky. No spotlight illuminated the darkness tonight. The city was quiet, its guardian moving unseen through shadow and stone. And in cell 218, Jonathan Crane continued his silent work, patient as only the truly obsessed can be. Gotham had not seen the last of Scarecrow. The next time, he would be ready. The next time, even the Batman would learn the true meaning of fear. In the perfect darkness of his closed eyes, Crane continued his calculations, whispering formulas like prayers. And somewhere deep in his mind, a burlap mask waited, patient and eternal, ready to be worn again. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.